People do not make decisions based on raw facts. They make decisions based on the narrative frame built around those facts. If you try to win an argument with raw data, you invite resistance. But if you control the frame through which reality is observed, you dictate the conclusion before the debate even starts. Perceptual distortion is the highest tier of strategic warfare. In this masterclass, discover how to hijack status, exploit cognitive dissonance, filter reality, and permanently lock your opponent into a narrative where compliance is their only logical option. The pre-decisional anchor exploits this psychological vulnerability by establishing an exaggerated reference point before the formal discussion ever starts. By casually mentioning extreme market valuations, worst-case industry failures, or ultra-high benchmark expectations in passum, you subtly calibrate their perception. When the actual terms are presented later, the target does not evaluate them against objective reality. They evaluate them against the extreme anchor you planted earlier. As a result, standard terms suddenly feel remarkably generous, and aggressive demands appear entirely reasonable. The human mind cannot tolerate holding two contradictory beliefs or behaving in a way that opposes its own self-image. Cognitive dissonance. Exploitation is the art of deliberately creating psychological friction inside the target's mind, then offering your narrative as the only escape hatch. You accomplish this by highlighting a sharp contradiction between their stated values and their current operational realities. For example, contrasting their desire for high status with their current stagnant results. Accepting your perspective instantly resolves their internal tension, allowing them to feel aligned, smart, and safe again. They eagerly adopt your frame because doing so saves them from their own cognitive torment. Deep within human neurology, the drive to protect and elevate social status supersedes cold logic. Status hijacking ties your strategic frame directly to the target's ego and reputation. You position your preferred narrative as the definitive marker of elite visionary thinkers. When faced with this psychological setup, the target realizes that rejecting your offer is no longer just a business disagreement. It is a direct threat to their standing in the hierarchy. Driven by the fear of social decline and the desire to be perceived as part of an elite tier, they align with your narrative, adopting your objectives to shield their own ego. Objective reality is vast and chaotic, making it impossible for anyone to process every detail simultaneously. The selective reality filter is the systematic practice. You do not tell outright lies. Instead, you aggressively amplify favorable metrics, testimonials, and trends, while quietly burying or recontextualizing inconvenient facts as irrelevancies. By controlling the flow, sequence, and emphasis of the information provided, you construct a carefully engineered echo chamber. To the target, the observable universe seems to point toward a single, unavoidable conclusion. Because their brain only sees the dots you have selectively highlighted, they connect them exactly as you designed, convinced that they reach the conclusion entirely on their own. When a dispute remains purely tactical, your opponent can fight back with strategic counter-arguments. But when you elevate the issue to a moral plane, counterattacks become psychologically dangerous. The moral high ground seizure is executed by wrapping your strategic narrative in universally accepted ethical principles, such as innovation, transparency, protection of the team, or long-term stewardship. By defining your position as the noble, responsible path, you automatically cast any opposition as selfish, short-sighted, or ethically compromised. The opponent is suddenly forced into an uncomfortable defensive posture. Fighting your proposal means publicly taking a stance against high principles. Unable to risk reputational damage or face the guilt of playing the villain, they abandon their tactical resistance and comply with your frame to maintain their moral standing. The final phase of perceptual manipulation is ensuring that once a target accepts your narrative, they can never retreat from it without destroying their own credibility. The irreversible story lock is established by nudging the target into making public, structural, or official declarations that bind their personal identity to their board, publish press releases, or publicly praise the joint vision in front of their peers. Once they have openly identified with the narrative, psychological trapdoors seal shut behind them. Even if they later discover hidden costs or realize they handed over significant leverage, their fear of looking foolish, hypocritical, or inconsistent prevents them from backing out. To admit a mistake would destroy the public identity they just broadcasted. Bound by their own need for behavioral consistency and public pride, they are permanently locked into the path you created. They will defend your narrative to the end, not because it serves them, but because their ego cannot survive breaking the lock.